Morning. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this second webinar organized by Soliver about the soil health. My name is Marta Popova, and I have the pleasure to make the introduction to this second webinar. So grab your coffee and let's dive together into this very interesting topic, which is the incorporating of the soil health into the urban development projects. So what we have on the agenda today, we'll start with the definition of the two concepts of soil quality and soil health, and presentation of some operational indicators and the insights of the French IndiquaSol project. Then we have a practical implementation from the example of the Brussels Soil Health Quality Index. We'll continue with the decision support tool to assess the ecosystem services that are provided by the urban soil for a better urban planning. We'll make a short break for 10 minutes, and we'll continue with two case studies. The one provided by Islander European project, which is about the integrating of the soil health into the contaminated land management, and a case study for brownfield remediation in Vitoria-Gasteiz from the Basque Country, Spain. And we'll end up our webinar with a wrap-up and the next steps from Cécile Legrand. But before we continue with the presentations, I'd like to shortly present you Soilver, which is in the origin of the organization of this soil health webinar series. So Soilver is a self-financed platform for knowledge development and knowledge exchange on soil and land management. So our main motivation is to facilitate, to enhance the collaboration between different stakeholders, between experts, policymakers, and citizens in order to improve methodologies and tools, and also to provide guidance towards a better and more sustainable soil management. So while we are doing this, simply because we are convinced that there is an added value of joining forces on issues of common interest for the Solver members in order to go ahead and to progress together on these matters. For the moment, the Solver members are mainly public organizations. We have ADEME from France, the Ministry of the Infrastructure and Water Management from the Netherlands. We have SPAC and the Public Service from Wallonia, Belgium, the Swedish Geotechnical Institute, and IHOBE, which is the environmental agency from the Basque Country, Spain. So why we are organizing this soil health webinar series? It's of course in relation to the proposal of the proposal for the European Soil Monitoring Framework Directive, which raises questions that we would like to address and to answer in this webinar series, such as the availability of soil health data, the scale of the analysis and the scale of decision, what are the soil measurements that need to be taken, how to aggregate those measurements, and how to develop an integrated soil health index, what are the available tools to assess soil health, what are the sustainable measures in order to preserve or to restore soil health, and what are the technical or legal constraints for more sustainable soil management. But also, there are some questions, of course, that are related to the stakeholders' engagement and transformational challenges. For example, how can we raise awareness in order to put healthy soil on the agenda of the organizations and make this part of the whole management process and procedures? How to create partnerships with landowners and land users And last but not least, how to bridge healthy cells with some societal challenges that are depending on cell health. For example, the concepts of the green cities, the climate adaptations, food security, etc. We have organized two webinars on this aspect of cell health. The first one was about the setting the scene, and it was a webinar provided by the members of the cell represented countries from France, Belgium, Netherlands, Basque Country, and Sweden. And it was held on 5th of November. We had the first webinar that was provided by external experts from different countries, and the topic was the soil management and the land planning. And now, today we have the second webinar, which is focused on recycling brownfields. With regards to the next events on 19th of June, we have an interactive session during the AgroConsult conference that will be held in Liège, in Belgium, and will provide an overview from the first and the second webinars, and will of course engage into a discussion with the participants, and we'll try to have some more feedbacks or some other aspects of the cell health and the integration of the cell health into the decision making process. In the autumn, we have two more webinars. The third is about the contaminated site management, and the fourth one is the concept of technosoil. Just to end up my presentation, I would like to present you some takeout messages from the first webinar that we have organized in January, which was focused on the soil management and the land planning. So the general statements were that, for example, the soil health assessment in urban areas highlights some limitations for the integration of the soil health at different scales, and at urban, at regional, and at country scale and project scale. Also, it's the question of how to preserve or to restore soil health from the artificialization, if there is no monetary value, was also raised. Of course, the need of the integration of the soil health into more broader policies, such as the environmental and the urban planning, is important in order to achieve the outcomes. And with regards, for example, to the data needs, there is a lack of the information of the biological and physical parameters of the soil in urban area. For example, there is also a need to clarify the concept and the assessment of the soil degradation, soil health, and the soil functions. There is a lack, of course, of one methodology for assessment of the soil health at different scales, at project, urban, regional scales. And concerning to the instruments, it's important to assess the soil health effectively at different scales, and to link the soil data to soil function and to different land uses. And to do this, it's important to connect the land use planning tools, and which require more multidisciplinary fields such as biology, pedology, or chemistry. And of course, we need more support from policymakers, from experts, and more awareness to achieve these goals. So that was all from my side. Don't hesitate to follow us on LinkedIn. Then we'll on our page, we'll provide some more information about our next webinars. Thank you very much. And I'll leave the floor to just to go back to the agenda, to Geoffroy Serret, who is the moderator for our webinar today. So Geoffroy, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Marta. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this very nice webinar that I guess we are all happy to share our ideas and results on this very nice topics. I'm a professor at Université de Lorraine in France and would describe myself as an urban soil scientist. But now let's move to, as you said, Marta, to some elements of definitions given by my colleague Isabelle Cousin from INRAE, and she will present the results of a very nice review, the Indicasol project from France. Isabelle, the floor is yours whenever you want.
Okay, thanks a lot, Geoffroy and Marta. So I just start sharing my screen. Is it okay to see the full screen?
Perfect.
Okay, so I start. So hello, everybody. Thanks for the organizer to give me the opportunity to to explain you some elements that we have done in the context of national French expertise, and which is called Indicasol project. And today I will focus on the definition of soil quality and soil health, and I will also bring you some insights about some indicators and their operational level. So just to precise one point, this is not dedicated to Brownfield especially, but this is more general linked to all land uses. But anyway, I think whatever the land use and the situation, we can use the same definition. So let's start by defining soil quality, soil health, and soil function. So the methodology of our work was to have an extensive evaluation of the published literature. So we have browsed hundreds of papers, of scientific papers, and of course of what we call the CRE literature. So it means reports from agencies or from labs or from companies, of course. And then we have synthesized everything into some definitions. So we have here three definitions of soil quality, which are not in fact completely independent and anyway, which are not in trade-offs. So firstly, the soil quality is simply what is the soil. And in fact, when you think to the monitoring networks in your countries, probably the main indicators that are collected are indicators which just qualify what is the soil. Then what is more important perhaps for us is the capacity of soil to function. So it's directly linked to soil functioning and soil functions, and then I will focus more on this point. And then when you browse the literature, then you can see that perhaps one of the initial definitions of soil quality given by Carlin and collaborators in 1997 still applies. And I remind you this definition, the soil quality is the capacity of a specific kind of soil to function within natural or managed ecosystem boundaries, to sustain plant and animal productivity, maintain or enhance water and air quality, and support human health. Oh, sorry, there is an end too. What is important here is this high size word. This is kind. So it means that when looking at soil quality, we do not look at one soil. We look at one kind of soil, a group of soil. So, and to define the quality, we look at the potential of this kind of soil to fulfill a set of soil functions. Oh, sorry, it means functions is missing here. So you have group one here, group two here, and we look at different functions and the level they can have. A group can be a soil type or a soil land use or whatever you want. And then inside this group, you can give reference values, which are the range of existing values. For example, in this group, what are the main value of the general value, mean and max value of bulk density, of I don't know what, level of contamination into one pesticide and so on. And then if we look at the definition of soil health, the difference is that with soil health, we consider only one soil and the position of one soil in each kind of soil. So for example, let's now have a look on soil A and soil B. Soil A belongs to group 1 and soil B belongs to group 2, and the health is the real level of fulfillment of functions. So what you can see here is that soil A fulfills 65% of group 1, and whereas it is higher than the fulfillment of group 2, which is here, this one is has a lower health than this one, which fulfills 75% of the soil quality. And then it means that if we are interested in looking at the position of one soil in a group or a kind of soil, we will be interested at looking in threshold values. So is the soil higher level than a threshold which defines the healthy situation of the soil? Sometimes we also have some target values, which are the values that we are interested in reaching to be sure that the soil is healthy. An important point here is that you can see one of the definitions of quality is the capacity of soil to function. So it means that we have to define some soil functions that we have here defined as the association of elementary processes which sustain an integrated action, which is a function, and then let soil functioning. So if we are interested in soil quality or soil health, we have to define indicators for soil functions. And how to deal with that in a cooperative proposition in a project, usually with stakeholders. We have to share in definition and co-build definitions and indicators between stakeholders and experts. So firstly, we have to precisely define the objective of the quality or health in the evaluation. We have to propose for this objective what we call an indicandum, which is a Latin word which only means what has to be evaluated. And from this indicandum, we define indicators. So of course, the stakeholders are mainly involved in this part. What is the objective? And of course, what are the indicators? Because usually they already have indicators. And in this, experts, they give their expertise to precise the indicators, the way to go from the indicandum to the indicator, precise the indicandum, the way to go from indicandum to indicators, and also some indicators. And then when we have defined the indicators, we have to evaluate them by data, interpretation system, and then communicate. And so the data usually are known by stakeholders. The communication definitely is the word of stakeholders. And the experts, they can interact at several levels to help in data acquisition, in data analysis, in this flow, and then to provide some statistics, mapping, exercises, and methods, and so on. And all this communication between experts and stakeholders relies on the scientific literature, but also reports from stakeholders, what I call the gray literatures, and of course, mainly on expert knowledge. And this communication, this collaboration, these discussions between experts and stakeholders will probably be the best way to define indicators to be sure that we reach the objective we are looking for. Okay, but what does it mean? Does it mean that we do not have any indicator? Oh, of course not. So inside our group of experts, we have provided a basic list of indicators to evaluate soil functions. So here is the list. Of course, I won't use this this little chart, but just explain you how it is built. So you see here we have in the middle of the chart, we have the indicators. Then here at the right side, we have the different soil functions. We have defined 6 functions, some of them being split into sub-functions. For example, supporting biodiversity is supporting soil organism and supporting vegetation. And regulating water is regulating water quality and regulating, water quantity. We also have the function storing carbon. We also have the function, very important for you, for brownfields, regulating contaminants. We have the function providing nutrients to the biocenotes. And then we also have this basic and important, and perhaps the most important one from my point of view, maintaining soil structure. As soils are concerned, maintaining soil structure is definitely very, very important, because it's how to calculate fluxes and stocks. So definitely it's very important. Here in the middle, you have the indicators, and here at the you can look at one indicator and see what is the function it helps to precise. But on the reverse way, if you're interested in one function, you just have to look at the indicators here, which are the red level quadrats. And you also have these rows quadrats, which are not basic indicators, but we have called them determinants. It means that they are not completely necessary to evaluate the function, but they are necessary to interpret the function. Of course, if you're looking at soil structure, you will need bulk density and structural stability. But to interpret them, of course, you need elements on soil texture, because, of course, clay soil, loamy soil, silty soil will have different values of structural stability, bulk density, but different evaluation of soil structure function. On the left side on this chart, you have also the threats and the degradation level that are at the moment discussed in the soil monitoring and resilience law, and you can have the correspondence between some soil function and some soil health. And here in the middle of the chart, you have four informations: the context to evaluate the indicator. Is it on a profile? Is it on a watershed? Is it on a horizon? You have the possibility to use standard design method, and of course, what is very important, I will focus on them later. Is it an operational maturity? What is the maturity level and operationality of the indicator? And then here, what is important in management is it's used in economic valuations. So let's have a look on some indicators, and especially on their operational level. So to discuss the operationality, we have two types of operationality level. The one is the technical operationality, which rely to the soundness. So is the indicator relevant for my evaluation? Its measurability, it means, do I have the methods to measure this indicator? Then you have the salience, which is the way the indicators is really related to this indicandum. These are the technical operationality. In one word, can I do it? And then you have the use of the operationality, part of the salience. Also the intuitivity, it means if I am a stakeholder using this indicator, I am sure that it fits my objective and it fits what I understand from this. And the last one is the usability. So may I use it to evaluate at one scale in my watershed, in my city, in my brownfield, and so on. And then the indicators from the very large chart here, which is more than 50 indicators, we put them in this wheel where we evaluate all these dimensions of operationality, and we end up with something like this. So you have here each level here is one indicator. Of course, we have a correspondence between these names and the real name of the indicator. And here, each small part is the level of operationality related to this 5 level of operationality. And if you look at this, you have from here to here some indicators where quite everything is green. So it means that the these indicators are in a way mature. We can use it. We know how to. They fit the purpose. We know how to measure it and to measure them, and we know how to use them. Here we have some maturing indicators. So it means yes, more or less I can use it, but not completely. Sometimes I miss a method. Sometimes I miss the way to interpret them. And here you have the indicators to be developed. So it means it's difficult to have methods, even standardized methods, and it also sometimes is difficult to interpret them in a correct framework. And so here you have physical, chemical, biological, and physical, chemical, biological, and so on. So if we have a look on the indicators in the soil monitoring and resilience law in the last version from 2024, you'll see that, yes, you have lots of mature indicators that can already be used. There are some indicators that are still have to be precise, and you also have one indicator that we have classified as an indicator to be developed. And if we look at the proportion of these indicators related to the physical, chemical, biological, you see that, perhaps it's surprising, the biological indicators, lots of them are already mature. And there isn't any biological indicators from the soil monitoring, which is indicators to be developed. And for chemical and physical, it depends on the level. So just before to finish, I say that we need some reference value to interpret indicators. So we have very huge, large tables. Unfortunately, they are only in French at the moment, but you can find the existent value to evaluate soil quality. So for example, you have here indicator of bulk density. It's proposed regarding 4 land uses: crops, grasslands, forestry, growings, and all together. And for each indicator, you have the mean, max, medium, and mean value. And of course, the reference that we use, and usually this is the French Soil Monitoring Network. So with this, we can evaluate soil quality. So I remind you, a group of soil, here classified as land uses. But to evaluate soil health, we need thresholds, and we have to evaluate them per function or per threat. And here we can have a look on bulk density and the way it evaluates soil deep compactions. And you also have the values here, and of course the reference where we have taken this value. Unfortunately, we do not have lots of target values in the literature. So just to finish, if you want to learn more about this study, you can hear the seminar, which has been recorded with an English translation. You have an English abstract of 12 pages, and then you have 2 main books in French with all this reference here. So thanks a lot for your attention.
Thank you very much, Isabelle, for this very comprehensive presentation, which I would say usefully lays the foundation for our upcoming discussion. So, Marta, if I'm correct, we will have the question and answer at the end of the 3 talks, just before the break?
Yeah, right.
Great.
Or after each, you can ask your questions directly in the chat box. And also during the webinar and after the webinar, I've sent on the chat box a Miro board where each one of you can put his ideas or some feedbacks or some comments. So please.
Okay. So is there any, let's say, urgent question to be addressed to Isabelle for now? Otherwise, you can keep it for a time to discuss after the 3 first presentation. Okay, so let's do that. We will take time later. So, François, we would now be really delighted to discover the, let's say, pioneering work that you have carried out in Brussels. So, if you can share your screen.
I'll share my screen.
Great. Meanwhile, I see that questions are arriving on the chat, so please feel free to contribute. You can also warmly ask to Isabel to translate the whole report in English. I'm sure she would be also delighted to do that because she has plenty of time. Okay, François, this is nice. We can see your screen. I think you can go whenever you want.
Okay, fine. Nice to meet you, everybody. So my name is François-Henri, and I am soil expert for the Brussels region. I am in charge of the development of our new good soil strategy and its tool, including the Brussels Soil Quality Index, BSQI. I'd like to talk to you this morning about the Brussels Soil Quality Index, or how to develop the Brussels territory, taking into account the quality of the soil and its ecosystem services. First of all, a few words about the context. The Brussels region is a closed, non-expandable territory of 162 square kilometers. That it's highly urbanized. More than 50% of its territory is impermeable. And in this context, the soil is a precious resource to preserve, and the Brussels region decide to implement a soil preservation strategy starting in 2019, the Good Soil Strategy. Now, the Good Soil Strategy consists of 52 measures ranging from the acquisition of knowledge, sustainable management practice, territorial development, and the BSQI is one of the first measures that we launch. Now, why a Brussels Soil Quality Index? First of one, so to objectify soil quality. To our knowledge, few diagnostic tools currently exist to qualify urban soil as being of good quality. Now, for us, a good soil is a soil that has good biological, chemical, and physical characteristics and provides a maximum of ecosystem services. It's also the same definition used by Europe. Secondly, decision-making in urban planning to make also better decision in soil allocation, best use for the soil depending on its quality. Thirdly, development of the knowledge of the Brussels soils. Everybody know knowledge is power. It's important for guiding future preservation measures. However, we know very little about the quality of the soil in our region. And finally, diagnostic guideline for soil improvement. The BSQI is the gateway for diagnosing soil degradation and it establishing guidelines for its improvement. Now, in theory, a few words about the BSQI. The calculation of the BSQI goes through several steps. We define homogeneous sampling zone. An homogeneous zone is a zone with similar topographical characteristic of occupation and observation. For example, a lawn versus a plantation. The aim is to obtain a sub-index for each homogeneous zone on a given parcel of land. We do soil sampling and observation by cloud or by drilling. We then carry out laboratory tests, and we attribute a score for each measure done, and we calculate an index by homogeneous zone and by plot. In conclusion, the BSQI provide interpretation at multiple level. For each homogeneous zone, general soil quality score, plot and homogeneous zone, soil deficiencies and strengths per parameter, ecosystem services provided by the soil of the zone, soil degradation measured in the zone, recommendation by the soil expert on what function used to give to which soil, and also for the project, general summary of soil health, ecosystem services, and degradation on each parcel. Now, in practical, I'd like to share with you two different concrete cases of application of the BSQI. The first site is located to the southwest of Brussels. Here, it consists of 6 plots of land, mainly covered by vegetation or crops. The history of the site is quite simple. It has not undergone any major anthropic transformation, as you can see from this photo taken at different period in time, except for 2 plots further north. This will ultimately have an impact on future development decision for the site. Now, in conclusion, the future development of the site involves the erection of a residential building. The question is where to put it. A number of factors will have to be taken into account. First, the actual occupation of the site, green spaces and vegetable garden. The soil contamination detected by the initial pollution studies. The multiplication of players with different objectives, municipality, SLRB, Bruxelles Environnement, gardeners, the consideration on the ground, presence of wetland, and finally, the result of the BSQI, which you can see in the table below. An index is given for each homogeneous zone shown on the map. And considering this point and the fact that zone F and G are the most deteriorated, it was decided to build in this zone, here and here. This is a concrete example of the use of the BSQI as a decision-making in land use planning. The aim here is to guide soil use according to its quality. The second site is located to the north of Brussels. It consists of further plots of land, mainly covered by crop or by vegetation. What's the interest of the BSQI here in this context? The BSQI is a decision support tool, but also a diagnostic tool. In this case, the question is to identify degraded area and find solution for the rehabilitation. We will first analyze the degradation index and then more finally the parameters to identify the problem as well as possible solution. So in the zone 1 shows significant degradation index for several types of degradation, lack of organic matter, loss of biodiversity, erosion, and compaction. If we compare with to zone 4, the index of zone 4 is clearly better. Alors, why? What's the explanation for that? If we look more closely at the parameters, we can see that zone 1 has poor structural stability, a low organic matter content, a deficient soil ecosystem, and the presence of compacted layer. As shown by the slate test, the cloud of soil literally dissolved in water. What's lessons? The issue and solution lie in farming practices. In zone 1, traditional farming with plowing. In zone 4, market gardening with agroecological practices. So it's the end of my presentation. So feel free to ask me a question about this practical example of about the BSQI in general.
Thank you very much, François. It was truly interesting, and you will see that there are many connections with my presentation. And also, thanks a lot for, let's say, reminding us that knowledge is power, as we may have the feeling that some of our world leaders could forget it sometimes. But well, thank you very much. Are there urgent questions? I can see one on the chat about from Fabio saying that the indice de dégradation is reasonable, especially the aspect erosion, perte de nutriments. Yeah, how do you measure things related to biodiversity loss, François?
We measure that with it's not a qualified tool that we use. It's more a quantitative tool. We measure the biological mass.
Okay.
So it's yes, it's the life of the soil. It's very difficult to determine in practical because we have also considered the cost of the analysis. So here we decide to implement a practical tool. It's not. It's a balance between scientific index and practical index. In fact. So we have to do choice to a better use of the index. And so voilà. Microbial mass, it's easy to measure. we have laboratory
Mm.
we find laboratory to do that. So, but we don't have
Okay. Okay.
a quality of the measure. It's only
Okay.
the
Okay.
quantity.
Maybe two other short questions from the chat and maybe with short answers. Cecile is asking you, and I was interested also in this question. How do you define the, let's say, homogeneous zones?
It depends of the topography.
Mm-hmm.
It depends of the use of the zone.
Mm-hmm.
It depends of yeah the observations
Okay.
uh, that made.
Okay. And maybe a last question for now from Paul. He was wondering if you succeeded in integrating these results from the BSQI into, let's say, planning and decision-making process, maybe at a larger scale. Because this was really dedicated to, okay, I can have a building here or have a green area here at a smaller scale, but at a larger scale, did you succeeded to integrate that?
Larger scale, at the scale of the
Or
region.
even let's say the whole city or the whole metropolis, saying, okay, this part, maybe I don't know, Paul, if I'm expressing it clearly, but this part of the city have very good soils, so let's preserve them from artificialization, and maybe let's focus on this part of the city.
Mm, yes, but to do that, we have uh, to have a better knowledge of our soil
Hmm.
in Brussels, and it's our difficulty because we
Yeah.
don't know we don't have um, a big knowledge, a
Mm-hmm.
big we don't have data about our the quality of our soil
Yeah.
in general. So it's uh, we decide to implement this tool to get also information about our soil. And yes, the idea is to start with free use
Mm-hmm.
about uh, 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 project implementation by urbanists of so
Okay.
and uh, at the moment that we have enough information, it
Mm.
could be possible to make on the decision in the scale of the region.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, François. Would you mind stopping sharing your screen, please? And for
Yes, I
sure,
don't
for people
know.
in the audience, if you have other questions, please keep them preciously to ask them to François in.
It's okay, and I stop share. Sorry. Okay.
Okay, nice,
No, it's
super
okay.
nice, great. Okay, so indeed, thanks to you, François. I think that my presentation will be fully in line with what you just presented. So I'm really glad to have the opportunity to present this work about the development of a decision support tool to assess the ecosystem services provided by urban soils in order to improve urban planning. And this tool is called Destisol. So very briefly, because I guess that you're all aware of that, urban planners have many issues to deal with when, let's say, defining the future land uses. And let's say, to put it in a very simple way, that they have to, let's say, deal with some, provide some support for economical activities, for housing, places for leisure, or for public services, design some infrastructures for urban travel. But while doing that, they mainly consider soils as, let's say, a surface, a 2D surface. Whereas, for sure, we know that there are multiple issues that cities have to face, such as urban heat island, natural risks such as flooding, air pollution, ecological discontinuum, or food dependency, or even contamination. And really, the idea behind this talk, and I think that François would also agree, is that to tackle such issues, we can also receive some help from soils, from the ecosystem services provided by soils. But if we want to do that, we have to consider soils as a 3D living ecosystem. So, and maybe to go quite quickly, but deeply into urban soils, which is, of course, according to us, a very interesting topic, we have to be aware that urban soils are very diverse and very heterogeneous. You know, this collection of, let's say, soil profile, all of them have been found in cities. And the main point here is to consider, and I ranked them, let's say, as a function of their gradient of anthropization. And this is very important to understand this diversity, meaning that in city, you can find some soils that are very similar, if not perfectly similar to natural soils in the urban forest. Some are dedicated to agriculture and can be slightly modified. Some can be found in urban gardens, in private or family gardens. And in this case, they can be, the modification can be stronger. You can also consider having in cities some constructed technosoil, and this will be the topic of an upcoming webinar from Soilware. Green roofs can also be considered as soils in cities. And of course, there are some soils that can be degraded due to industrial activity. Here, this is a brownfield. This soil is a quite specific one from an industrial decantation pond. And there are in cities also some soils underneath the pavement or the roads. And I think that maybe one of my key messages is really to apprehend this diversity / heterogeneity and complexity of urban soils. And we have to consider this complexity, considering that there are some very good soils and not all urban soils are degraded. Whereas for now, we all know, and just have a look at these pictures, that urban soils are rarely considered as a valuable resource. We all know that at the beginning of a, let's say, development project, okay, urban soils, no, these are waste, these are degraded, contaminated, let's get rid of them, let's excavate them and landfill them, without even trying to survey their quality. But of course, we need some vegetation in cities. So let's then scrap some topsoil, some natural topsoil from agricultural or forest area, and let's bring into our cities some nice soils. Whereas this is a mess, and we can no longer get rid of all urban soils, considering that they are all degraded, and use natural resources such as natural topsoil. So this is one of the aim of our work, and again in line with what François explained. So our idea is how to take urban soils potential into account. I will just like that. First, by surveying, diagnosing the quality of in-situ urban soils. Because of their complexity, we have to go on all urban soils to evaluate their quality and their potential. Then, by determining, let's say, compatible urban land covers, based on these soil properties. Some soils, you know, this is one example of the soil. Some soils can be compatible only with silt paths, but some can be used to produce some edible vegetation. And then the last step that I will now explain is that we could also try to assess, evaluate, score ecosystem services provided by urban soils with their land cover. This is what my talk will be about. So our tool, our method is in multiple steps. Step one, very similarly to what François explained. This is based on an initial study, and maybe for some of you that work on a question of contaminated land, this is almost the same. Let's make an analysis of the site by looking at the past land uses, the geology, the hydrology, topography, plant cover. And to support this presentation, I will give as an example a site located in Nancy, so in the northeastern part of France. And this site, as you can see here, is rather small, is a former military site. which is currently under development to become a nice eco-district with some buildings, small buildings and green areas, place dedicated to urban agriculture. So the first step is, of course, thanks to this initial study, to, again, the same as François, to split the site into homogeneous zones, meaning that soils from zone number 1 are more or less the same and are different from soils from zone number 2, which are different from number 3 and 4. Then let's go to step number 2. And you know that soil scientists are always keen on digging soil pits. So this is what we did. And you can see here the 4 different major types of soils on each zone. And you can already see that these soils are, let's say, quite different with more or less artificialization of these soils. We can see here a layer of maybe some crushed rocks, which is of course artificial. You can see some artifacts in this place. So we have to, let's say, dig some pits to observe the soil, to describe the soil, and then to take some samples in order to make some analysis. And each of these soils is described through a selection of, let's say, a minimum dataset, dataset of indicators, and you can see the results of the description of soil from zone number A, from zone 1, and here are the indicators. I will go briefly through them. We describe the slope, the soil depth, if possible, the color of each horizon, root density, biological activity, percentage of coarse elements, capacity, artifacts, and also, so this is field observation, but also based on some samples, some chemical parameters such as pH, organic matter, and so on. And then, based on that, so this is step number 2, and then which lead us to step number 3, which is quite logical. Step number 3 is based on the use of these soil indicators for each soil from each zone in order to rate, to score soil functions. And to do that, I will just give you an example. What we did is that we selected relevant soil indicators to evaluate a soil function. This is an example for the water infiltration function. And what we did in DestiSol is having the most simple approach possible. I know that there are more complex ones that are also truly relevant, but here was really focusing on very simple things. We consider slope, depth of the soil structure of each horizon, texture, capacity, coarse elements, and hydromorphy features to evaluate the capacity of the soil to infiltrate water. And we did that in this step number 3 for many soil functions, including fertility, carbon storage, and so on. And you can see the scoring of each functions for one soil. The scores go from 0, the worst, up to 3, which is the best score possible. And then after scoring these soil functions, we go to step number 4, which is trying to evaluate the adequation between the actual state of the soil based on this soil functions evaluation and the possible land cover or soil cover. And here you can see that we considered different soil cover, such as buildings, silt paths, paved paths, grass paths even, bare soil being, let's say, the reference, a grassland, garden to produce some vegetables, shrub and trees. And based on the soil properties and the scores of soil functions, we can estimate, let's say, an adequation between the actual state of the soil and the potential to, let's say, host a soil cover. You can see that in this case, for this soil, the soil is 100% compatible with a grassland, but only 60% compatible with a building, maybe because of a lack of geotechnical properties. And then we can go to step number 5, which is the final one, and which is dedicated to the evaluation, let's say the scoring of ecosystem services provided by urban soils and their land cover. Just to give you an insight about it, this is the evaluation of ecosystem services provided by one soil, considering a land cover being bare soil, so without any vegetation. You can see the different ecosystem services from regulation of air quality, local climate, global climate, flooding, habitat for biodiversity, production of food, and so on. So for this soil, having a bare soil, of course, this is very limited, if not null, in terms of production of food. Of course, a bare soil could not produce any food, neither some ornamental resources, neither support building, but it can help to mitigate a little bit local climate. And it can also be a support for biodiversity. But then, just to show you the influence of this soil cover, let's consider the same soil, but now with grassland. And you can see that, of course, it would improve the scores of ecosystem services. Especially, it would improve the mitigation of local climate, because vegetation could also have transpiration, not only evaporation. It could help to mitigate flooding through water infiltration, because vegetation could enhance the capacity of soil to infiltrate and also limit, control, improve the control of erosion. This is just to show you how there are really two steps. First, we consider the capacity of the soil, plus we add through, let's say, a correction matrix, the influence of the soil cover. To sum up our approach, let's take a very simple example. Let's consider, at the scale of a site, an urban development project led by, let's say, an urbanist or an architect or landscape architect, which we would call Project A. Project A, in a very simple way, has some places dedicated to lawn or grassland, some places dedicated to roadways or parkways, some to buildings, and there is a tree park on it. This is a project. But now here is the initial state of the site, and maybe a part of the site is sealed because of former land uses, but there are also some grassland. And as I showed you, the idea is to start with this initial study, to split the soils into zones, and then to go in the field and dig some pits in order to, again, describe, observe, and sample and analyze. Thanks to that, the first output is to evaluate the capacity of each source to have different land cover. And again, I put it simply, zone number 3, for example, could be compatible with every type of land uses. On the contrary, zone number 2, the soil from zone number 2, you could not consider having a tree park for now. Maybe because the soil is not fertile enough, not deep enough, I don't know, but for any reasons, the soil is in its actual state not capable to have trees on it. And zone number 1 can only have some roadways or grasslands, again, for many different reasons. Using this information, the user, let's say the urban developer, could have two choices. First one is, okay, thanks for the work, for the nice work, but I would like to stick to my initial project. But thanks to this information, the developer would know that if he would like to, or she would like to have a tree park on zone number 2, he would have to improve the soil. Maybe by different approaches, adding some organic amendments, constructing technosoil, whatever, but it would cost some money and require some efforts. And then same for zone number 1. But this is still useful. And an alternative is maybe to try to slightly modify project by creating project B that would fully consider the actual potential of the soil. By, let's say, okay, maybe we could consider having the same surfaces. We could consider to have the tree park not on zone number 2, but not on zone number 3, with the most fertile soil. And you can just move one land cover or move land covers within the site in order to really take the whole soil potential into account. And by doing that, you would need you wouldn't need to bring topsoil or to landfill or to excavate the actual soil. You can really use all the soils that are actually on the site. And the last step, as I showed, would be to also evaluate the ecosystem services provided by the soils with their land cover. And you can here see a comparison between the initial state, Project A, and Project B. So, and this tool is already available as a beta version. which we developed together with the company SCE in France. And if you're interested, please feel free to reach me to have access to this tool, which is unfortunately only in English, in French for now. So to sum up, first key message: urban soils are strongly diverse and not systematically strongly anthropized nor degraded. Some urban soils are really great, and we have to take them into account. Then, as has been shown, it is possible to optimize the allocation of the land uses as a function of these potentials. Indeed, some of them are degraded, but some of them could be great. By doing that, of course, it is possible to reduce the consumptions of the importation of such a natural resource as topsoil, which, and I guess that we are all aware that this resource is becoming scarce. And to conclude, maybe from more ambitious point of view, it is also possible to optimize the ecosystem services at the scale of an urban site. And let's say if in a city there is a specific issue with flooding, we could consider having the development project trying to optimize these aspects, or same for production of food. So thank you very much. If you're interested, you can click on this QR code to have access to our latest publication on that. And if you have some question, I would be happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Geoffroy, and it's great presentation. We have some question in the chat. First, all your examples have the capacity to serve as a basis for buildings, yet as your example seems to have this 0%. Why?
Well, yeah, okay. Thanks a lot for the question. You know, I should have made the things clearer. First, I showed one true example in the city of Nancy, with this only 60% compatibility with building. But in my sum up scheme, it was not on the same example. It was let's say, an imaginary example. So I should have mentioned that. Sorry.
And how do you define the zones in strategies and sampling strategy?
Yeah, I would say this is probably one of the trickiest part of this work. And just like François explained, we did more or less the same. We tried to merge all the available data on the past land uses, on the geology, on the topography. For example, on this site, of course, it's not visible, but the altitude was different between that part of the site here and this part. So there is a different of topography, and you can also do a visit of the site to have first elements to describe the heterogeneity of the site. So, and you can also make you can dig on a few points to check for the homogeneity of the soil. But honestly, this is probably the most difficult part of this exercise.
Yes, thank you. We have a question for both Destisol and USB. Is there a scenario considering the actual prevention of any soil sealing for a given urban project? If not, why not considering first the sealed areas to do urban project involving sealing processes?
Yeah, thank you, Esther. I think it is. François, would you like to start with about this consideration of prevention of soil sealing?
Now, in our index, we consider the soil sealing in our index. We calculate an index for soil sealing. It's how we calculate the index for soil sealing. We put the minimum score for parameter that we think it's not that we think that, sorry for my for my English not perfect. I prefer to speak Dutch or French, but my English, I don't speak English every day, so it's sometimes it's difficult to find the good word. So there are some parameters for the soil sealing that we put at the minimum because there is no value to have to measure these kind of parameters, and we measure other parameter. For example, carbon stock. It's it's a good idea, I think, to measure this kind of parameters for soil sealing. And we also consider in our index the percentage of soil sealing as information in general. So in this matter, we consider we can also put a direction in the decision to manage the soil sealing and to manage the soil sealing. So I hope that my explanation is clear enough.
Okay, I can maybe briefly answer. Marta, just to know, when would you like to make the break?
Yes, but there are many questions, so I think we
can
answer to the question. We can
10 to 11. We can continue until 10 to 11, and then we'll make a break, I suggest.
Okay, so when shall we start the break, sorry?
At 10 to 11, at 10:50.
Okay, ça marche.
Okay.
So maybe to answer from my side, to maybe both Esther
for you.
and I think that this question of prevention of soil sealing, at least in Destisol, if the soil is sealed, it would have a huge influence on the ecosystem services. So this is on the urban developers to say, okay, I'm okay with that, and with the urban planning state to say, is it okay to have sealed soil because this, of course, they are still useful if we want to create buildings, but it would be very clear that it would have a major influence in many ecosystem services. And just to answer to Uwe, we used this Destisol to compare or to monitor the evolution of desealed soil over time with different strategies of desealing, and it works pretty well because you can clearly see within a few months the impact of desealing on the, let's say, increase of ecosystem services.
Okay, thank you. Maybe there is a question from Paul. Have planners, decision makers been receptive to the tool?
Yeah.
Do you think that soil data information is available too late in the planning process to make a difference in the site design? Very big question, interesting.
Yeah, and very relevant question for sure. Well, to be honest, first, I would fully agree, and Antoine Vial also presented that during a previous webinar. Time is really crucial in the implementation and in using the information about soil. But well, about the reception of the tool, to be honest, this is really very important. And I would say from our sides, this tool was really a soil science-based tool. And in our mind, it was, wow, this would be great. It would be super useful for urban planners and urban designers. And at the end, well, it was. And this has been used at different places, but not as much as we expected to be crystal clear. And I think that we really have to also share the knowledge and the expectation together. And this is also the aim of one European project, which is ongoing, which is called SPADES, Spatial Planning and Design with Soils.
Yes, thank you. We have many questions, so I try to get you. There is always the question of the result for answering my Destisol question, but in the spider net graph, the building capacity potential was always 0%, so it's linked to the first question. I will contact you separately to understand this better. So, okay.
Yes, thanks, Fabio. Very quickly, while you're reading the question, this was because in this very simple examples that I showed, comparing two land covers, there was no building. So if there is no building, of course, there is no provision of a service related to housing. But of course, if we would install a building, it would. And probably for very specific questions, having a look at the article or sending me an email would be easier.
There is a question. I was wondering if the municipalities you have worked with, Bruxelles and Marseille, have public services to survey and monitor their soils, and they must do it with external help.
Okay, thanks, Juan, for the question. François mentioned that. I think that one of the main gaps is that we need to really foster the surveying of all the soils within a city. And this is a huge work considering the huge, complexity and heterogeneity. But for now, I think that in both examples, what we are doing is, okay, there is one project, one ongoing project. Let's survey the soils on this project. But what we need now is to have data on the soils at the scale of the world, let's say city or metropolis, and this is really lacking. And maybe I had also a question for François. Who is performing this survey in your case? Is it your group? Is it a private company that really go on the field?
Well, what kind of survey?
I mean, qui est-ce qui réalise le diagnostic concrètement?
It's an expert, a soil expert, a soil expert. Yes, it's we have two different type of soil index. A soil index for professional and a soil index for everyone. But for professional, it's made by a soil expert.
Okay.
Because in Belgium, we manage soil pollution since long time ago. And so we have pollution soil expert, and they are able, not every soil expert, but a lot, they are able to implement, to use the Brussels Soil Quality Index for professional.
Okay.
Okay. And just a last question before the break. Somebody says that a great presentation for Destisol. You said you speak about the beta version of Destisol tool is available. How can this tool be obtained?
Just by sending me an email, I can share the access file easily.
Okay. So the tool is you can send this.
I think
tool is in Excel, or
it's an open source. We can each of us can use it.
Well, very briefly, so this is an access file, and I think because we developed this with a company with the support of ADEM. I think for now the only thing is just to sign a paper saying that you would be okay to share your feedbacks with us about the use of the tool.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot. So very nice presentation and a lot of questions. So we have a break of 10 minutes.
Until 8 minutes.
8 minutes
okay.
now.
Continue at 11.
Talk to you at 11. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
See you.
See you.
sharing already.
Yeah, let's move to the north with Paul that will present some work from the Islander project. And I think it will be very interesting to go deeper into brownfields and contaminated land, especially. So, Paul, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And you're seeing the right screen in presentation mode, right? Perfect. Yes, so my name is Paul Drenning. I'm a postdoc at Chalmers University in Sweden, and I'll be representing sort of the Islander team. Though, as you can see at the bottom, there's many more people involved with this, and I got help in this presentation from Jennifer Harris and Virginia Derick at BRGM, and Nazare Koto and Vanessa Correa at NOVA. There's many others involved. But anyway, today I just wanted to present how we in Islander are working to integrate soil health into contaminated land management. And I want to note from the onset with this little dude here, this is a work in progress and this is an ongoing project. So during this year especially, we'll be doing quite a lot to develop this overall concept. But it'll be worth showing how we're approaching this so far. And so in Islander, there's a few specific objectives related to sort of a risk-based contaminated land assessment for the promotion of soil health. And what we're focusing on essentially is integrating existing knowledge on soil health, which we've seen quite a bit of here already today with previous presenters, into the decision-making process for sustainable and risk-based land management, or SRBLM, which is shown in this figure to the right here with a few of the main core concepts. And so there's a few core objectives within Islander related to this, such as combining risk-based approaches and soil health to prioritize sites for contaminated land management, which is led by NOVA. And also just generally extending sort of risk management concepts to consider soil functionality as a receptor for risk management. And I plan to explain what both of these mean in the context of this project. But to begin with, just sort of our points of departure in Islander, what does it really mean to consider soil health in remediation redevelopment projects? And having sort of a more risk-based approach to soil health means trying to maintain or even restore soil functions while managing the risks posed by contaminants or other stressors. And so in principle, this also means sort of matching the suitability of a particular land use for different risk classifications with the soil functionality requirements for the particular land use as well, which is shown in, say, the Destisol tool. So I think there's a lot of overlap here for sure. And so ideally what we're talking about really is connecting the soil contamination and the risk with the remediation process and the future land use. And so one way of visualizing this is this sort of flow chart here. If we have our sites, our input with the site characteristics, and we're doing a risk assessment to come up with our remediation options and weighing them. When we identify our existing remediation options, which could be more low input or standard conventional techniques, the standard process would be just to kind of go directly to remediating a site for our desired future use. But we can kind of modify this process a bit by integrating a soil health assessment to also identify sort of maybe levels of residual pollution that should be managed, bioavailability, for example, and also the level of soil functionality. And when we consider the soil health assessment and our choice of remediation strategy, that may limit or kind of refine our choice of suitable methods depending on what we're trying to achieve. And we can also integrate this knowledge into, say, a cost-benefit analysis to also take into account the soil functions and ecosystems as an important objective in our site management process. So that's kind of the overall idea here. But what this really means is in the decision-making process, we're balancing a few different things, such as the level of the soil health required for future land use, the level of decontamination required to manage the risks, and also trying to avoid further degradation of soil functions where that's a desirable objective for a particular project. And so I have a conceptualization here to kind of show what this means in practice. So considering the land use suitability, just a second, I'm going to hide this floating meeting control. There we go. Considering the land use suitability for different risk classifications and soil functionality requirements. So kind of try and combine the approach for risk assessment with the soil health assessment. And just a quick note, I've heard previous comments that these are two distinct worlds, and like the risk assessment for contaminated land management doesn't really overlap with soil health assessment or management. And I think that's really a concept we really need to bridge these two different worlds here. So we're considering the first part with the risk assessment. So maybe we can classify a site along sort of a spectrum from a low risk to a high risk. And just a standard stoplight could be used to represent this, say a red for high risk and yellow for medium, green for low risk. And if we add sort of a soil health assessment to consider the functionality of a site from low to high, we can further classify our different types of sites. So here for a few example land uses, considering the sort of compatibility for these different risk and functionality situations. If you look in the top left here, with a relatively high risk site and maybe low functionality, kind of your typical industrial, maybe soiled land uses, like an industrial manufacturing site or even just a parking lot. Those may be well suited for sites that have like a high risk where conventional remediation techniques may be required, and soil functionality is not necessarily an important part of this process. Though, of course, there may still be remediation or risk management required, but maintaining that functionality may not be a core project objective. But if you look at the other side of this, for a more soft in use with high biological functionality, like an agricultural use or just a general natural area, or in an urban setting, an urban green space, ideally we would both have a low risk site and high functionality. And there's ways we can sort of modify that. And then we could also consider different types of remediation techniques for these different quadrants. So up in the top left here, maybe these conventional high impact remediation techniques maybe still be very suitable because if it's a high risk situation, we want to rely on these well-established remediation techniques to typically remove the contamination, but often and maintaining soil functionality may not be an important objective. But over here, we may be more interested in considering low impact or gentle remediation techniques or options to both manage, say, residual contamination at low to medium levels of risk, and also improve or maintain the soil functionality. But that's not to say that these are only relevant in this specific area, because we can also use them as part of a treatment chain, or maybe like a soil polishing technique for maybe a diffuse contamination. So there's a variety of ways we can actually use these. But then if you consider, say, an example here where we have a high risk site that's desired for a soft end use, like a green space, we would probably require some sort of remediation, and remediation could either maybe maintain the soil functionality while reducing the risk, or potentially reduce the risk while kind of having a deleterious effect on the soil functionality. And then some sort of refunctionalization would probably be required after that. And similarly, with a low functionality desired for a soft end use, we may still need to refunctionalize or rehabilitate this soil. So tying all these different parts together is something we're really working towards in Islander. And then how could we do this? Because today, legislation regarding contaminated land management primarily focuses on risks to human health and ecological protection targets when defining the future land use and sensitivity. And remediation is often mandated legally when the, say, contaminant concentrations exceed these certain trigger values. And in some cases, like in Sweden where I work, it's still based on a sort of a total contaminant concentration, which may not be really the best way to do it, but that's often how it's done. And then with regards to sort of this new soil monitoring law, if you look at their criteria for what is a healthy soil, if a soil is contaminated, it's technically not healthy according to this, though as we've seen in the previous presentations, they can still perform functions and deliver ecosystem services. And that's something that's quite often neglected in the contaminant land management process. And this next point is also typically neglected, which is that the remediation techniques themselves can have significant negative impacts on soil functionality. So it's worth considering that in our site management process. And so we think about this as being two sort of interconnected contexts in which soil health needs to be better integrated into the contaminant site remediation. The first one here is looking at soil health as a receptor in its own right in the context of managing risks, which means basically considering as a risk the impact on soil health and its subsequent provision of ecosystem services as part of our overall risk assessment, and not only focusing on human health and removing or say reducing these human health or ecological risks, but also considering the soil health aspect as a risk. And then, of course, the second point, considering the impacts, which could be positive or negative, of the remediation process itself on soil health. And that in turn leads to us trying to integrate these soil health concepts into the different stages of a sustainable risk-based land management process, which could be iteratively added in different steps of the site management, which is shown in a basic flow chart here to the right. Starting with just setting our remediation goals. What are we trying to achieve? Our initial desk studies, our site investigation, our risk assessment, our consideration of different remediation options, the remediation process itself. And then as well, the post-remediation process and the follow-up and management and monitoring process is something where soil health could be included to a much greater extent than it typically is today. And so we're approaching this within Islander as a bit of a stepwise process. And I just first want to note with this box here is that we are trying to harmonize sort of the way we're approaching this with the terminology and the various soil indicators or descriptors with the soil monitoring law and these a few coming ISO standards, which we've been made aware of. And so if we have 6 steps here, and this sort of process to go from a contaminated site to a productive site, starting with a site investigation, this combines soil health and risk assessment, evaluating remediation alternatives that may be suitable to manage these contamination, considering a future land use, its suitability, considering which functions, soil functions and indicators may be most relevant for a future land use, and then the impacts of our select remediation alternatives on these soil functions, and then finally, sort of in an iterative way, refining our choice of remediation option and site design. And the sort of flow charts, which again is a work in progress, so this is more of a simplified version, can look a little bit like this, where these numbers correspond to these steps I just mentioned there, where we have our first site investigation, we see a variety of different pollutants or contaminants. There's different remediation methods to manage these, which could be more conventional, typically sort of high impact removal techniques versus low impact, which is an important focus in Islander. Then we consider our future land use, and urban is just circled here to show that it matches this matrix, which I'll present here in a minute, for the specific soil functions that may be relevant for different types of land uses, as well as the indicators that may be useful. And then connecting this to the impact remediation methods on these individual soil functions, and then kind of refining our overall approach. And so I kind of want to show in a little bit of detail what some of these steps mean here. And so first, thinking about the site investigation, remediation option appraisal, this is typically based primarily just on the risk assessment, which is sort of a validation step to determine whether our planned future land use can actually be suitable for the site as it is, so determining this fitness for use. And this risk assessment is based on these source pathway receptor contaminant linkages to determine an actual risk to humans and ecosystems. We're also potentially considering ecotoxicology and residual contamination. And sort of a bridge between these two, just as a note, is this sort of ecological risk assessment or triad approach. And that's something that there's been a lot of work regarding this. And this figure is just kind of a simplified way to show that in a risk assessment to determine our most viable remediation option, we're typically just considering a few criteria, such as the time required for the remediation, how effective it is for risk reduction, and what does it cost? And that's typically the primary criteria in our options appraisal. But if we tie in the soil health assessment, which I'm not going to go into the detail because we've seen a lot of good presentations earlier today, we're thinking also about the capacity to provide ecosystem services and matching that soil functionality to a future land use, and then considering maybe additional physical, chemical, and biological indicators that are typically not part of a contaminated site investigation. And in Islander, again, I just want to mention that we have an emphasis on low impact remediation techniques to say manage risk by also improving soil functionality. And so the next step is, say, matching our future land use with soil functions and indicators. And this has been led by Nova. And one way they did this was in a workshop at the Nicole and Common Forum, a joint spring workshop, is in a session about what does soil health mean on industrial and urban land. They led a session about where the participants would indicate for these specifically these types of land uses, for example, which of these soil indicators as shown on the right here, or descriptors are most relevant for those particular land uses, according to their knowledge. And that led to sort of a matching of and a grouping of physical, chemical, and biological indicators for specific types of land uses. And so a development from this led to kind of a hierarchical concept of the kind of complexity of the land uses and which future land uses, depending on their biological functionality, would be most relevant, say, considering physical, chemical, biological indicators. So for like a car park, there's really not much that we need to consider, mostly just contamination and texture for, say, geotechnical considerations. But in a more sort of agricultural setting, we're obviously much more interested in this broader sort of functionality picture. So I think this is a good conceptualization. And this led to a matrix for decision support to select these key soil descriptors for different land uses, where the land uses, as mentioned previously, which correspond to the Lucas land use and land cover system, were matched to specific soil functions. And these are a little bit outdated, actually. We need to harmonize these with an upcoming ISO standard. Were then matched to these land uses and then in turn put into sort of a decision support matrix here, which has been color coded to indicate for these different functions and land uses, whether it has a high relevance, green, a medium relevance, yellow, or red, sort of a low relevance for that particular land use, as a way of sort of prioritizing which soil health or soil quality indicators we actually care about in this particular case. which can be used to sort of inform our overall monitoring process. And then something else that's undergoing right now is considering the remediation option impacts on these soil functions. So using the same sort of list of indicators or descriptors, we're trying to add into this option appraisal the impact on soil functions here. And so here we're matching just a sort of a matrix, which is still being worked on, of course, which these sort of main aggregated soil functions, according to ISO standard, like this organic matter storage, transformation, recycling, these individual sub-functions within this overall function, and then in turn the individual indicators or descriptors that can be used to characterize sort of the status of this particular function. And so we're going to carry out a literature review for a set of these remediation techniques to determine based on literature and studies, what is the overall trend for whether or not this remediation technique has a negative or positive or maybe even neutral impact on these particular soil functions, which can be used to determine our overall approach. And so that's just a recap for how these various steps that I showed. And I see I'm running over time, of course. So to wrap up here with a few take-home messages from this work. Important take-home message is this deliverable is expected to be delivered or finalized in January 2026, so keep an eye out for that. And in terms of the context of this webinar, recycling brownfields, and just to echo what Geoffroy has said in the Destastall tool, integrating this broader soil health assessment into contaminated land management is really essential for better decision making and maybe matching sort of a future land use with the capacity of a soil and its soil function. And ideally, this fitness for use concept should cover both risk and soil functionality for a future land use, and that's something we want to emphasize. And so Islander, we're working to better support the selection of indicators and descriptors based on the intended land use, and considering the impacts on soil functions during the selection of remediation options, and how to better include soil health in the different steps of the decision-making process for SRBLM. And something I didn't mention here, but we're working on is how to value soil health to include it in a cost-benefit analysis. And I didn't really have time, of course, and something we're working on is how to demonstrate the application of this overall method for a few test cases as part of the Islander project. And all this will feed into the Islander roadmap that we're developing for how to consider reuse of a contaminated land. And if you want to follow this project, we finally have a new website. So feel free to go to the link there, theislanderproject.eu, and sign up for the newsletter to keep updated with the project as it's going on. So, and that was it. And here are the partners involved and the necessary funding acknowledgement, of course. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Congratulations, Paul. And I really love the concept of soil polishing technique. Be sure that I would reuse it. Another comment, yeah, I think that your work is truly relevant because integrating soil health in the decision making about soil remediation, I would say it is a major step in the management of contaminated land. And probably that maybe people in the audience would say the same, but I can truly perceive a huge expectation from French companies that's working on this field, and they are really willing to integrate let's say, a wider approach to only dealing with contamination.
Perfect. So we're entering in a good time.
yeah, for sure. Questions from the audience? You could.
Right now, there is no question. Maybe people are.
Yeah. Some will arrive in.
Yeah, I can answer them if they pop up in the chat. If you want to go on.
Maybe I have a question. You speak about the tiered approach. Is it something you would like to develop, or you think you will apply to the case studies?
There's been some work already in Islander kind of reviewing sort of the kind of the development of the triad approach and how it could be relevant for what we're working on now. And I think sort of Nova has been leading that. But I think that's definitely something we're going to consider because there is a significant overlap, of course, between triad and ecological risk assessment and soil health assessments. So it might be an interesting bridge to kind of work with further. But that's definitely something we're working on. But I don't have any concrete way we're doing it yet.
So you will develop both. You will take into account the human risk assessment and the ecological risk assessment at the same time. And
that's
how you balance both? Yeah. So you have to be to reduce the impact for human risk and ecological risk both at the same time.
Yes, I mean that's the idea. I mean, if it really depends on the site, of course, or which is most relevant, because it may be the case that it's primarily driven by a human health risks which are carrying out the remediation. But I mean, I feel like this is especially relevant in the context where ecological risks, and thinking about it in Sweden in this case, there's quite often projects where the remediation is justified because of risk to the soil ecosystem as a protection target. But the remediation technique that we choose is an excavation-based method. And it's like, well, we're kind of removing the entirety of the soil ecosystem to protect it. So it's like kind of balancing these things that may be kind of at odds with each other is sort of how I think about it.
Yeah, can imagine. Yeah. Thank you.
There is,
we had
just
a
one
question from our Austrian colleague about maybe, Paul, about did you go into the economic model, let's say, of this widening approach? So, and a question from our colleague who's online was who would pay for this, let's say, additional indicators to evaluate not only contamination but the whole soil health?
That's a good question. And that's something we're definitely working on as well. Because, I mean, part of the Islander project is kind of considering how you can financially and or just economically motivate a reuse of a contaminated site. So, I mean, that part of the analysis package is, of course, part of the overall costs. So, I mean, if we can demonstrate as well that the value of remediating the site in terms of taking into account all of the wider values of actually reusing this particular site, including soil health aspects, and ideally trying to kind of quantify those and monetize those and show that if you balance these costs versus the benefits, it may actually be worth it in the end. But finding somebody to actually pay for that is sort of the next step in the overall process. And that's something we're working on now as well.
Can we also consider, for example, that thanks to this approach, we can optimize the remediation of the sites? I mean, if we choose some gentle techniques, for example, if you want to build for the zones of the site that can that are will be redeveloped into green areas that will use more gentle techniques. So can we more change the way of doing things?
Yeah, I completely agree, and that's somewhere I would really like to go. But justifying that to, say, regulators has proven to be a little bit difficult in my experience. So it really takes some more work here to maybe have like a more comprehensive method, which is something we're looking at Islander. Maybe because there's so many different moving parts with this, so trying to kind of put it together in one sort of consistent framework is a challenge.
Okay, thanks a lot, Paul. I think there are some additional questions in the chat, but I think we have to move on to our last speaker, and last but not least, Juan, we're very happy to have you and to go in your country for, if I remember well, very nice examples from an operational point of view, and we are really glad to have you with us this morning. So whenever the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, it's not in presentation mode yet, but this is coming.
Okay.
Yeah, no, be careful. Yeah, well.
It is now? Okay.
Perfect. Go on when you want.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me to speak to you today. I work, I'm Juan Vilela. I work for the city of Vitoria-Gasteiz in a place that is called the Center for Environmental Studies, which is a center that provides the city with environmental strategies and projects and good practices. So today I will speak about some brownfield remediation projects and also some soil monitoring projects that we've been doing in the city. It's called the Green City because in 2012 the city was awarded with a European Green Capital Award. So that's why the title. Just to get a glimpse of how the city looks like, it's a mid-sized city in European terms. It has 250,000 people. The surface is 270 square kilometers, so it's a big municipality for a region. More or less the territory is 1/3 urban. As you see in this picture, it's a quite compact city. And then it's surrounded by agricultural land with scattered small villages around it. It's another third of territory dedicated to that. And the last third would be a range of mountains that surrounds the city. So today we understand this Vitoria-Gasteiz city as a city connected to the nature and the landscape surrounding it. But this has not always been the case. When this place where I work was created in the 90s, the city was facing some environmental problems, mostly in the periphery. As you see in these pictures, there were illegal activities, dumpings, pollution, abandoned gravel pits, such as this brownfield in the bottom, flooding problems. And by then, the idea was try to solve these problems with solutions inspired in nature. By then, was called ecological restoration, and try to avoid, let's say, the hard solutions from the civil engineering perspective. One of the main projects that is recognized today is the Greenbelt construction. So this was a planning idea in the beginning with the goal of connect some surrounding spaces by recovering them, because there was a lot of degraded areas. So by doing that, the idea was to promote the conservation of some existing natural spaces in the matrix, also to offer some leisure spaces for the citizenship and use them later as an educational tourist resource. It also worked in terms of urban growth as a limit to the expansion of the city in time. And nowadays it is almost complete. This is just a picture of one of these parks that are part of this green belt system. Is the Sabalgana Forest. It was a restoration project of the gravel pit you see in the little picture on the right. And today you can see how the city stops when this park starts, and it provides the park a lot of ecosystem services. We understand how this works today, but the idea is that if we haven't planned these uses before, probably we would see industry or commercial or residential uses today here. So that was more or less done during the 90s and the 2000s. And in the 2014, when we got this Green Capital Award, the idea was to expand this philosophy of ecological restoration inside of the city and outside of the city with a green infrastructure system. As you see, we mentioned here that the idea was to use nature-based solutions to do that, try to connect through corridors and nodes all the green infrastructure that we have. And to do that, we propose to do it by pilot projects. So small projects scattered around the city, trying to do that. This is a conceptual scheme on how to work with nature-based solutions to build a green infrastructure. So the idea is that there is some ecosystem services that we want the green infrastructure to provide, and then you have to apply different techniques depending on the scenario. So let's say that if we're talking about water regulation, if you are in the outskirts of the city, in the greenbelt, in the periphery, probably you have more room and more space to do a retention pond. But if you are in the city, you have to work with urban creek. Or even if you are in the medieval town, which is at the core of the city and has no much public spaces, you have to find some other solutions as green roofs or green facades, depending on the site. So this is more of a conceptual scheme. So getting more into detail and in specific projects, I will just share some examples really quick to give an overview of what we do. This is one of the biggest remediation projects. It's called the Jundiz Park. This is an industrial estate that is at the west of the city. And the idea here was trying to create a green corridor surrounding the industrial estate. The soils that were left, let's say, in this part of the city were abandoned, were landfills, there was pollution, there were degraded soils, and it was a little bit of abandonment. The thing is that there is a lot of traffic next to it, and the idea of the green city was not really accomplished here. What we were seeing is this kind of brownfields that you see in the picture in the right. So we started working with some gentle remediation options phase by phase. This is a fifth phase, almost 2 years for each one of them, and 10 hectares of surface. Just to give some examples of the work we did here, the idea is that we have some polluted sites. The regulators were much more interested in reducing the pollution. But we started working in collaboration with some universities and research centers, and I started talking, this was 2018, about the soil health concept, trying to understand that soil was a living system that interacts with its microorganisms and the plants over them. So trying to understand that this is a three-part ecosystem, and that if we wanted to restore and to bring these ecosystem services, we needed to increase the health of the soil. So we started doing just a pilot project of 1 hectare by increasing the organic matter, trying to feed these microorganisms and do a rotation of agricultural crops in this kind of industrial area. So it was kind of innovative by that time, and trying to convince, let's say, the local regulators that soil health was important to be taken into account. And we started doing this first in 1 hectare. It was successful. We really could see how the soil was improving, and we expanded this idea to the whole corridor. On the left side, you see that we also were trying to avoid the dig and dump, let's say, technique for polluted soils that were used until then, and try to reuse as much materials and dirt on the place as we could, so in situ. Also, the importance of adding organic matter addition was taken into account in any form. So we were using compost, shredded pruning. You can see how we were doing these mounds that they are called hugelkultur, is the kind of burying trunks. And this was all waste, let's say, organic waste from the municipal facilities. So we use this site as an experiment, let's say, for these new techniques, trying to reutilize all the materials on the site. So for instance, some of these inert materials were transformed into roads or into acoustic barriers or visual barriers for the site. In phase 3, this is where we started working with polluted sites, and we were awarded with a grant to develop the phyto-sudoe project, which was about phytoremediation. So we had the survey of the place, we knew the limits that we had to get, and since we were going to create a green infrastructure, we thought that phytoremediation was the solution. So the plants and the trees and the crops that we were using to decontaminate the soil would be later the trees and the shrubs of the park. So this is the kind of a summary of the strategies we were using, such as soil amendments, bioaugmentation, tree plantations, agricultural crops, and agroforestry systems. This was quite successful, so we got another second project to do that. So we expanded these phytoremediation techniques throughout the site. So this is just a kind of idea of how it looked like in the beginning, then how we try to separate all the materials to reuse them in different places, and how it looks today. And this year we will continue this project with phase 6. Another project that I would like to mention is the schoolyard naturalization. So we have public schools that most of them, their patios, their places for leisure for the kids are paved, asphalted. And here the educational community asked us to put a green infrastructure over them. So the idea was to de-seal these paved areas. And by doing that, we can bring natural elements so the kids and the teachers can play and learn in contact with nature. This was very successful. And since 2021, we have done 14 of these projects. This project is not in the urban core. We do have public forests, and just to mention that we are also interested in taking care of them. We are in a mission of being a climate neutral city by 2050, and we know that soil forests have a lot to do on carbon sequestration. So this is just a slide showing how we were measuring the carbon stock in the trees and in the top 10 centimeters of the soil. I won't get into much details, so you can get a glimpse of different projects we're doing. This is the park in the south of the city that will complete the green belt, but it's a project that is not accomplished yet. There are many environmental issues. We have a lot of pollution. There are flooding areas, but the main problem here is that it's privately owned, so it's not a public land. And we've been for years trying to convince the owners to make this kind of gentle remediation park that later became a public park for the citizens. So far we have only been able to work in this small area with a retention pond that you see in the picture. I would like to mention also that we have a citizen science program for soil conservation. This started in 2018. Today, it's more common to see other municipalities working with the citizenship, but by then, I think we were very few. We did it with NACER, which is the Basque Agronomic Research Institute, and we developed this kind of soil cards that are really easy to use. So every year we have like a training course on a Saturday. We explain the people the importance of soil, of preserving soils, and we offer them a kit, a toolkit with very simple kits that you can use to measure your soil. If you have, let's say, an orchard or a garden that you can test. And if you don't have a site, we give you the opportunity to monitor one of our public sites or public projects. And then we have an online platform where you can upload your data. And that gives us a glimpse, even if it's not a, let's say, scientific laboratory test, it is a very useful test that gives you an idea of the quality of the soil. So it's a qualitative tool. And just to finish, I will mention that we just got a Living Lab soil project this year, and we have 4 ideas to develop with it. So one is creation of a native fruit tree orchard to improve the soil health in this green corridor that I was mentioning at the beginning. Number 2 is old landfill restoration through soil amendments and bioremediation techniques. Then the action number 3 is to monitor these naturalized schoolyards, how the soils are, because sometimes when you depave, you find soil that you can reutilize, but sometimes you have to bring soil from somewhere. So we know that compaction will be probably one of the main challenges of these soils, and we would like to monitor them to see how they are and how they will develop. And finally, we do have an idea to promote soil literacy, and that is the use of these soil cards, this citizen science program that now is open to the public. We would like to bring that to the schools, so involve the educational community in testing their green areas that they have in the schools. Some of them have naturalized patios, and some of them have little gardens inside, like where they teach some things to the kids. And we think that there is a lot of potential on the use of these soil cards to learn about the importance of soil. On the sites 1 and 2 that will be remediated, we will use some parameters to monitor the soil health. So I'm listing here some of them just to give you an idea. We do that with collaboration with the university. So we will take a look at basal respiration, induced respiration, functional microbial diversity. We will do some soil phytos or toxicity tests, and in some cases, some DNA metabarcoding to know about this structural diversity of the communities. I think that will be all. Well, I'm open to questions, or you can just send me an email if you want to know some specifics about these projects. So I'll stop sharing my screen.
Well, yeah, congratulations. This is both impressive and very inspiring to see how you succeeded in implementing all these very nice solutions. Thank you very much, Juan. A question from Paul. Time constraints are frequently noted as the main obstacle to phyto management, especially in the urban areas, because, let's say the urban owners or the owners or the managers would say, okay, we would need the problem to be fixed in maybe tomorrow. So how do you deal with these time issues?
In our case, because we wanted to construct a park, time constraint was not a problem. Okay. Because we did have some areas that could be open to the public. So basically what we did is, let's say the high risk areas that would be where you need more time to decontaminate the soil. We fence them so you can stroll around them but not get inside. And in time, let's say 4 years later, we were able to open them to the public.
Yeah,
So
okay.
in our case, phytoremediation was really the best option.
Yeah, this is again inspiring, and I guess that even for Paul, when he mentioned gentle solutions, for sure, gentle solution may have to be implemented at the right place and considering the right environment, including all these constraints. Waiting for question, and I think we are running out of time. Just you were mentioning green corridor and at the scale of the city. Do you also consider, let's say, brown corridor? I mean, brown
You mean
corridor
an
being the
agricultural
soil.
corridor?
No, meaning even the continuity of soil, because biodiversity, soil biodiversity could, of course, creating this brown corridor, continuity of soil could be very helpful for soil biodiversity. Do you, let's say, consider this?
Yes, we don't call it like a brown corridor. We look at that more as an ecological corridor, let's say, a connected nature corridor. But the site where we were working, it's very hard. We are surrounded, I didn't mention it, but it's the main highway that goes from Madrid to Paris. So it's a huge trench that was excavated. So we are not so much linked to the natural area surrounding. We would like to, but I think it's an opportunity that we lost when the highway was built. It was not considered that issue. I think today we would see continuity. There are solutions to do that, but not possible now.
Okay. Thank you very much. And again, there are also some comments from Fabio, for example, saying impressive and very good examples. So thank you very much, Juan, for your presentation. And Cecile, I think that I will give you the floor for the final conclusion.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Geoffroy. And I think it's late and maybe you feel tired. So I will try to finish with some wrap-up and key takeaways, some ideas from this webinar. I hope do you see my screen?
Not yet.
Yeah.
Did you start sharing it?
Yeah, maybe. No, I didn't. So, but sorry, it's not the good screen.
Don't worry.
Yeah.
Great. This is working.
Yeah, sorry. So some words to finish the webinar, some key takeaways. The first, we see that we need a lot of data to create and to calculate soil indicators, but there are many initiatives, many soil indicators, and maybe now it's time to harmonize these soil indicators in urban development projects. For project design, we see that it's needed to assess soil health in project design and how to integrate this new concept in economical, social, and environmental issue. For policy, synergy is needed to integrate soil health as early as possible in project development to promote sustainable land use. And now how to integrate into policies that it's needed to create decision-making tools. We see today that there are different tools that has been presented. So do we need to develop more decision tools for project development and to ensure consistency with planning tools? And we would like to going on in collaboration to encourage institutional cooperation to harmonize diverse interests in soil management and land use. So it's needed now to align data, tools, and policy in soil health in order to help drive sustainable land use. And let's continue to work together to value and to protect the soil as living resources. So we hope we will join you and you will join us for the next webinar, the 17th of September. The subject will be contaminated site management, how to improve soil health to promote sustainable polluted site management. We see today the Icelander project, and we will continue discussing on the same theme, and how to manage contaminated soil in sustainable way. And we will discuss more about phytomanagement and nature-based solutions. So thank you very much for your participation and to join us today. Now we stop this webinar and looking forward to further collaboration and research to protect and restore our soils. Thank you.